enough, even if our emotions get stirred up a little bit. Point is, Jesus says it must lead you to act. It must lead me to do something. I can't just hear, because he that hears and does not act and does not do is a foolish man. But he who hears and acts, that man is a wise man. And he puts a wise and foolish man in a metaphor of two buildings, two people who are building. I built in my lifetime 3 houses with 3 contractors. And how I built made a difference every time. What you're building makes a difference. So Jesus wants to give us in this little story about the house that was built upon the rock and the house built upon the sand. There are 3 truths, 3 facts that he wants to impress upon you and me. And the first one of these is that everybody who hears the message of Christ, everybody who hears the Word, is a builder. You're one of these builders. One or the other. You and I both. And this is true not only for hearers, but it's really true for all mankind, isn't it? Everybody is building some kind of a house for eternity. You know, when Jesus talks about this, he brings them down to 2 classes of people. And he does that a lot. You know, in Matthew 22 and verse 11, when he comes to the end there in his last week, and he talks to those Jews about the great feast of eternal life when we come to heaven, he says, you know, there are 2 kinds of people that come to that moment. Those who are dressed with a wedding garment, and those who have no wedding garment. He talks about in Matthew 7, this same chapter that we just read the story from, he said, now, there's a road that leads to life. It's straight and it's narrow. And there's another road that's broad and leads to destruction. And few find this road, and many go in this broad road. You see, he keeps dividing us into 2 kinds of people. 2 kinds of hearers. Wise and foolish, with the wedding garment, making the right choices. In John 5, he gives us one that says, the time is coming and now is, when those that are dead hear the voice of the Son of God and live. You know, that's one of the most important of things. Whether you're dead spiritually or alive spiritually. We're in one of 2 categories when Jesus comes to talk about us. We don't like that. That doesn't fit the ethos of America. You know, if you ask anybody in America any philosophical, religious question, they say, well, you believe what you want to believe. I'll believe what I want to believe. That's the great thing about America. And I think that's true. But that's not the way Jesus looks at us. There are consequences for making these decisions, for where we are, which one of these 2 classes that we fall in. And so all who hear are builders, but if you're a wise builder or a foolish builder, there's a reason for it. Something has happened. And you have to be thinking about when you build, what are you building? It's your character. Everything you do, it's about your character. You know that old saying, you know, my character is what I do when nobody's looking. But as you're building a home, you're building a place for eternity out of those choices that we make. And the foolish man is also building a house. But it's a hovel. It's not a mansion that we talked about. And so Jesus wants us to understand that it's all of us are building, each one of us is building a house by what we think. As a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. By what we dream, the dreams we dream, the pictures we put on the minds of our wall, or the walls of our minds. our ambitions? What do we want to do with this time that we have? Every picture that we hang on our wall. Sometimes when we're building this house, unfortunately I must confess that I've sometimes used shoddy material in building, and you pay for it every time. First time I built the house, I was real concerned about energy, 1975. So I got a heating engineer, and he designed my heating system, and he designed my insulation system, and I had real good, cheap, low electricity bills. I didn't do that this last time. My bills are high in North Carolina. I don't know whether it's just the way I built the house, but sometimes we build and we don't build for the time that the storm will come. Sometimes we put blasphemy, foul stories. Those are poor materials for our lives. Unclean thoughts. Sometimes we run to do evil with the crowd simply because we can't make the sacrifice and go against the grain of the multitude. You ever done that? I've done that. Sometimes we pass by on the other side in the face of great need. We clutch our money sometimes in the presence of great need. You're not like that most of the time. I'd say that about you. I know we made a great, generous contribution last couple of weeks ago. You're generous. But sometimes I hold the money in time of great need. Is this a fact about us? We're in the church. We're members. But we hide our membership in a trunk. Nobody would know exactly where we stand. When Jesus needs soldiers, sometimes we play the neutrality card. Hey, I'm on nobody's side. It's flimsy stuff that we sometimes put into the building. But I want to tell you, there are some who build staunchly. You know, this last week, we've had the great privilege to hear the life of Lucille Henderson and to think about Davis Johnson. Those are lives that are staunchly built. Let me give you some from the Scripture. One day Jesus is late in the afternoon. It's the hour of prayer, I think. He's tired. He's doing what we call people watching. You ever done people watching in the mall? One of the most interesting things you can do. Jesus gives it to us, you know, and a great lesson from it, just in a few words. He's watching them as everybody goes into the temple to pray. The wealthy, the not so wealthy, the educated, the not so educated, but they all have to pass the alms box. Some pass it. Some stand and make a great show. I got lots of money. It takes me a long time to get it out. Put it in there. There's a widow that comes. Now she has worked all day for 2 mites. That's the King James. 2 mites. Now whether she's thinking about a cousin or a friend or a husband that's over in the leper colony, I don't know. But she's thinking about the poor. And when she passes the box, she put it all in. She put it all in. And Jesus said about that, she hath put in more than they all did. How'd that happen? Because of what building she's building, what's in her heart, what kind of a person she is. We'll meet. We don't know her. We don't know her name. God willing, you and I'll see her someday. Because of the character she's building, a wise person. Here's another one. We love Daniel. Dare to be a Daniel, dare to stand alone. We like Daniel. But the difference with Daniel was what was in his heart. In Daniel 1 and verse 8, it says, but Daniel purposed in his heart that he would not defile himself with the king's meat. You know, if you and I are going to stand on the rock, we're going to have to do it with purpose and build like Daniel. I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. I'm going to make the sacrifice. We're building, all of us. And it's fine material you're putting in your house. When you walk life's common ways in loyalty to the God who leads you. That's good building material that you're making. So are you wise? Are you foolish? Am I? And here's the thing about it is, in the Old Testament, the record says, in the book of Chronicles and 1st and 2nd Kings, it's the history of the kings, and it'll say about a king, he did that which was evil in the sight of God. Or it'll say, he did that which was right in the sight of God. Now they didn't, the evil king was not all bad. He did some good things. And the good king was not all good. He did some bad things. Because all have sinned and come short of the glory of God. I know that. But the point is, what's the tone of their life? Which way are they walking? Are they like in the passage we talked about this morning that Lloyd brought to us in the class? Are we walking in the light as He is in the light, and the blood of Jesus Christ keeps on cleansing us? That gives us our tone of life, doesn't it? Are you wise, builder, in building your house, or is it a foolish building that you're doing? And the second fact that Jesus wants us to get, not only that we're all builders, but that the building is going to be tested. There's going to be a time of trial for your building. We don't build just for fair weather and sunny skies, do we? We put the roof on and we try to make it right because we know there's going to be a terrible rain. There's going to be terrible snow. And it's going to have a weight on the building. And the question is, have I built to make it hold? And in this case, Jesus is saying, wise or foolish, makes no difference. The time of testing is going to come. You see, it's not just the sinner that's going to be tested. You and I will be tested as well. You see, God doesn't coddle the saints. You're going to have trouble. He said in John 16 and verse 33, in this world you will have trouble. Had any? Yeah. Had a little bit of trouble? A whole lot of trouble? Yeah. And Jesus says, I do not pray that you take them out of the world. You know, that's not how we get over the tribulation. But I pray that you should keep them from the evil one, that you succeed in your test with Satan, with the tempest that comes in life, that you can face it and defy it and triumph when the storm comes, and it must come. And that's the first fact that He wants you to get about it. The realization that the testing has come, you got to realize that. You got to accept that. Christ frankly tells us that the storm is coming. Now, do you have a storm-proof faith? You know, we like to build storm-proof houses. People out on the plains, they like to get those storm cellars, and they go down in those when the storm comes. They need a storm. You need a storm-proof faith. So realizing and building for it makes a difference. Clovis Chapel tells a story about, and this is back in the 1920s, they came out with a new fabric called seersucker. Now we've got seersucker, we don't use it, don't see it much, just some. But when they first put it out, young man in a nice seersucker suit, summer afternoon, and the rainstorm comes. And he just gets drenched. Pretty soon his trousers look like that. It wasn't built for that. It wasn't fabricated for that. How many times have you heard about houses buildings. Snow came. Roof fell. Didn't build for it. Didn't build for it. Or a ship, you know. You put some little dinghy across the Mediterranean, put it loaded down with 65 people, and when 20 people's all supposed to be in the boat, it's a wonder they make it. If a storm comes up, they're not ready for the storm. We build those ocean liners for the storms. We build them with those nice ability to ride out the storm and make it even. It's how you build. And so this great parable that Jesus gives us, frankly, he tells us, you're going to be tested. Time is coming to you, to me. In some form, the storm is coming. Now the question is when it comes. When it comes. What does it look like? Sometimes it comes in the guise of temptation. You know, Simon Peter said, Lord, I'll follow thee to the death. Luke 22 and verse 11, I believe it is. Jesus said, Simon, Simon, I have prayed for you that your faith fail not, but when thou art converted, strengthen the brethren. Look what Peter was going to go through. He had a hard time with it. He overcame at the last. But the storm came in the guise of this temptation to take care of himself. How many times have I seen that come to me? Or it comes sometimes and you think, well, you know, if I do this, it's okay, it's pleasant. I know it's wrong, but it's pleasant. If I don't do it, it's a desert. I'd rather have the rosy path. The temptation comes in lots of ways to us. Any hour the crisis may be upon us. Song I like to sing sometimes, Sweet Hour of Prayer. You know that line in there? And oft escaped the tempter's snare by your return, sweet hour of prayer. You see, he gives us a way to get around the temptation, but temptations will come to you. Your sack of rocks you're carrying is different from the one I have. There is what Paul said in Hebrews 11, a besetting sin. You got a besetting sin? Think about it. I got one. I got a number. Can't count them all. But there's a guise of temptation that is the storm. Sometimes it comes in a guise of bitter personal loss. I've seen it happen to people. You go from plenty to poverty in seconds. Almost seconds it can be. You lose everything, and the wolf is at the door, and you think, where in the world am I going to go? Or it may come in one of the worst of ways. You lose someone, those ties, the tenderest ties of life, are severed. You lose a loved one. Great loss. Or you may lose health. I think about that a lot. Maybe you're going through health problems this year. Maybe you've looked at health problems. Maybe those kinds of things have come to you. You know, a gnawing pain. A sentence of death is on you and it isn't executed for months. And torture stands on your chest and grips at your throat, and burning hand puts on your mouth and you can't pray. The reason of the pain. Great loss of health. Can faith then speak with Job? Though he slay me, yet will I trust him. That's the storm. Or better yet, what better storm for us Americans than the storm of plenty? Israel goes into the desert with nothing almost. 40 years, just manna and water. Occasionally quail. But they cross the Jordan, and they take Jericho, and they take the land, and in a few short years it's victory, and everybody's happy, and they've been eating the delicacies and living in houses, and they've gone out of tents, and they are happy. And they've lost their faith, and they've forgotten God. who carried them through the wilderness. The chief danger in this land, isn't it? We're rich. You're in the top 2% in the world. Keep that in mind. You're rich. You and I. But the danger is we're so poor in that wealth that will stand eternity. We need that wealth, don't we? And remember, Rome was like that. That morning in August, when Vesuvius blew, that little girl did not know, that young teenager did not know what was going to happen that day. But she put on her bracelets and she put on her rings and she went out. And when she dropped the bracelet in fleeing from the city, she reached to pick up the bracelet. And all the weight of that ash held her right there. What was most important in life for her, for us, comes sometimes in the guise of wealth and well-being. But to everyone, Jesus says there's going to be the test. And to everyone there is this final test. For we must all appear before the judgment seat of Christ to give an account of the deeds done in the body, whether they be good or whether they be bad, whether you're on the broad road or the narrow road, whether you've got the wedding garment or you don't have one, whether or not you've chosen correctly, whether or not you've built a wise house on the rock, or did you build upon the sand? That's the question. And we must all appear there. Oliver Wendell Holmes walked the beach one day, and he picked up this beautiful shell and the nice, great concentric rings, and he gave him a lesson. You see, the mollusk that's in that nautilus has left that. And this is beautiful, but he's gone to build another one. He's going to build another one. And so he says, what a great lesson this is to me, that I should build more stately mansions, O my soul. Have you talked to yourself lately to say, I need to build a better mansion? I need to build a house that will stand the test. And the third and final fact that Jesus wants to give us, not only that we're building, that the house will be tested, but finally, this great truth. The test results are not the same for everybody. If you're a wise builder, the house will stand. It fell not. If you're a foolish builder, if I'm a foolish builder, the house will fall, and great is the fall of that. Nothing greater than what those decisions you make about your eternal home. Some will not be able to stand the test. Just as Jesus makes those demarcations between the broad and the narrow, the wedding and the garment and no wedding garment, he makes a very clear distinction here in the test results. If you haven't built on the rock, your house will fall. It will not stand. If you and I don't build it, when the tempest comes, whether it's now or in the judgment, it'll be a wreck on the shoals of life. 1 Corinthians 3:11, for no other foundation can you lay than that which is already laid for you, which is Jesus Christ the Lord. If our life is not built upon and guided by and tied to and connected with the Son of God, there is no hope in the judgment storm that's coming for each of us. But there are those that will pass the test with no loss. No loss. They'll outride the storms. Whether the gales are great or small, it makes no difference. This house is founded upon the rock, and it will stand forever. I like that song. if my house is built upon a rock, I know it will stand forever. The floods may come, the rolling thunder shock may beat upon my house that is built upon a rock, and 'twill never fall. Never fall. Never, never, never. Its foundation is sure and will stand forevermore. Yes, it will stand forever. It'll be like a tree steadfast, unhurt in the midst of the storm. You've seen that, haven't you? Lightning flashing everywhere, and the tree just keeps standing and standing. 1 John 2 and verse 17, for the world passes away with the lust thereof, whatever you and I want in this life. But he that does the will of God abides forever. You know, Jesus' statement, if you build your house upon the rock, when the winds come, the rains come, the floods are descending, the winds beat, your house will stand if it's on the rock. If you don't build on the rock, it will fall. Your life will be a calamity. My life would be a calamity without him. And you see, millions of people, millions over time, have vindicated the words of Jesus. Their life stands on the rock. If you haven't started that walk, if that's not your tone of life, he did that which was right. He started following the Lord and he stayed with him through the storms. Won't you begin that today as we stand and sing?